Hi, this is May Saeed Ali, and I'm the host of the G42 On Air podcast series. We are excited to be recording the G42 On Air from Mubadala studio. G42 is a technology company, a global leader in AI and cloud computing with the purpose of inventing a better every day. Each episode in this series will transport you into insightful, market-leading conversations about transformative technology to drive positive progress across industries and societies, all in less than 30 minutes. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Andrew Jackson, EVP, Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer, Core42, with a background in technology and a track record of success at companies like Palantir, European Union Research Center, and Susquehanna. Andrew is a leading expert in the global growth strategies and innovative solutions through analytics, data science, and AI. In this episode, we'll explore the impact of generative AI and how it's shaping our present and our future. We will discuss its applications, challenges, opportunities, and future advancements across industries. Andrew, it's great having you in G42 On Air podcast in Mubadala Studios. Thank you so much. I know you have an extremely busy schedule, but we have quite exciting topics to talk about. Starting with, please give us an introduction about yourself, about an overview on your background.
Sure. My name is Dr. Andrew Jackson. A lot of people call me Andy. I've been working with G42 for a number of years across different roles. Before that, I worked for a company called Palantir and another company called Susquehanna. They're big AI and data companies. And previous to that, I worked in academia. So I was a researcher. I did a PhD in machine learning and worked for the European Union as a researcher across many different projects.
Okay, so now I'm just thinking, first of all, you look very young for the amount of experience that you have. And second, do I call you Dr. Andy, Dr. Andrew, or Andy?
Just Andy. Just Andy.
All right, great. So Andy, this is the exciting news. There's a new entity, which is Core42, and we would love to know more about it.
Sure. Core42 is, as it says in the name, is kind of the core of what Group 42 is all about, which is cloud and artificial intelligence. It is a combination of different entities coming together to create a new entity that really is focused on, delivering more for customers. And that's really kind of driving the cloud for new customers and existing customers in AI and generative AI as it emerges. So that's a combination of Ingezat, Inception, and Group 42 Cloud.
So this is exciting times. We are launching a new entity, which is Core42. Tell us more about it.
Core42 is a AI and cloud company. As the name suggests, it's the core of G42. It is an amalgamation of Ingezat, Inception, and G42 Cloud. And we hope that this will be a new offering to the customer base here locally in UAE, but also internationally. We have great plans to grow this business and focus on cloud and generative AI, and really bring something new to the market that hopefully, along with our sister companies, will really support a new wave of growth.
Okay, so I get that Core42 is Ingezat, G42 Cloud, and Inception. They were already part of G42.
Yes.
So what made the decision strategically to club them together?
I think, number one, we were all working together really nicely. So I think that was a great starting point. But I think to really start moving faster, this is a world of speed that we're in. To take that and move faster, we needed to kind of come together more holistically, number one. Number two, I think that we have opportunities if we work more closely together to take on a lot more and start kind of doing more, especially in the AI space and the cloud space.
So Andrew, we hear so much about generative AI and there's so many definitions on YouTube and Google, people talking about it, but I'd like to hear from you. What is generative AI and what role does Core42 play in developing it?
Well, I think that's a phenomenal question. I think a lot of people are asking the same question. So generative AI is, I guess, relatively new for many people, but it's been around for a long time. It's training and generating new content from training on top of existing content. So that's something simple like generating a new poem or generating a new recipe from a query. So I think that's a very easy to understand perspective on generative AI. Core 42 is really doubling down on generative AI and wants to be a driver of generative AI for UAE and also internationally. So I think that's the real, I guess, sweet spot for Core 42.
Just before I came to our podcast, last night I was looking at the different possibilities of generative AI, and some of it is like I could actually train a model to look like me, talk like me, use my voice, and that's amazing in so many ways.
Yeah.
Where I can be in the spa while the other model of me working.
Yeah.
But there's also risks. So there's so many challenges, I would believe, in generative AI associated with the society. So can you share with us some of the main challenges that we could have?
Absolutely. I mean, we are doing projects to do exactly what you just explained to me, right? We're doing projects that are in this area where we render new people, historical characters, especially that have some interesting significance. This is an ethical challenge because, consent is a big part of this, making sure that, you can't steal somebody's identity and recreate them. I think...
But that's going to happen. I mean, the reality is going to happen. And this is very scary.
It's happening. It's already happened.
Yeah.
So the real question is how we, as a society, protect, everybody from this, while also reaping the benefits that this has. This has amazing power. Can you imagine if you can capture somebody, maybe someone who's passed away, that you can keep them alive in, the same way as a photograph, but going that step further where you can speak to them. I always think of this... if you remember the movie Superman, and Superman kind of brings his father with him in a crystal and can speak to him. And I think this is the era we're entering into.
Wow.
This is the science fiction part coming to life. So it's amazingly exciting, huge potential, massive opportunities for everybody. I think when we saw Twitter come out, we saw this one-to-many conversation where one person could tweet and everyone in the world could get that tweet and understand what's happening. I think where we're going is that one-to-one conversation where, people who want to embody themselves can have a one-to-one with pretty much everyone in the world. So I think that's really exciting, really powerful, but I do see, we have to work through some of the, the risk factors of those. And I think this is the same for many new technologies.
True, but this one is going in a very fast pace. It's like every technology. So do you think that the governments and lawmakers are prepared to create the right regulations for such a technology that is extremely capable of making a huge difference in a very positive way, and like you said, and in a different way? And I mean, we can talk about the malicious attacks. We could talk about schools and education. I mean, it can go from different verticals and levels. So can you share with us, if you have any information, how governments should be doing these regulations?
I think it's going to be by consensus. I think I think there's going to be some leaders in the field. We see OpenAI as a big leader, and they're obviously driving a lot of talk about regulation. We saw Sam Altman, when he visited here, speak about regulation very well. And I do believe that governments will take this on. I think UAE as a country is very safety oriented. I think that's a massive benefit of the country. And I think this is where we, as G42, we are contributing back to that thought process about how we kind of regulate this technology as now and as it emerges. And we've had various conversations already. We've had conversations at a global stage as well. So we're kind of playing a part for hopefully representing UAE as a player in this generative AI space. So I think we are engaging where there's an active dialogue in this space as the technology develops and emerges. So, but I do think that the governments around the world will move to regulate this. Maybe it won't be as quickly as we'd like to, but at the same time, I think already in schools we see. My own kids go to school locally here, and there's policies already about what they can do with generative AI. So this, I think on a practical basis, everyone's already reacting. I think it's excellent. I think we've talked to many different organizations here, and they all have generative AI policies already in place. So I think, on the ground, people are reacting incredibly well and very just sensibly. So they're applying common sense to the situation. And I think as long as people continue to do that and really kind of self-regulate to begin with, and until more general regulations can be drawn up, I think that's just the way we're going to do this.
Do you think we should slow the technology down till the regulations are up to standards, or it has to be in the opposite direction?
Honestly, I think I'd almost say that I think the cat's out of the bag at this stage. The generative AI is already happening. There's no slowing it down.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd love for everything to slow down, but I think that the reality of the situation will be that this is only going to speed up. New versions of the models are coming out all the time. Even ourselves, we're releasing models and building new models as we speak. So I think that I come back to the kind of more common sense approach. Obviously, we're hopeful that this technology will always be used in the best possible scenarios. But, at the same time, we're very conscious of the negative and are working with everyone we can to make sure that, this is AI for good.
Yeah. Talking about AI for good, you recently have launched an Arabic LLM, which is large language model called Jais. So can you tell us more about this model and what inspired you to create it?
Well, I think the inspiration comes from, let me first explain what Jais is. Jais is an Arabic-centered large language model. So we're really focused on Arabic and serving the Arabic community. And really that is inspired by the need to democratize AI and democratize this kind of technology and make sure it's used and useful by the kind of community that we serve here in the UAE and also regionally and globally. So we saw kind of an area that was underserved. There's over 400 million Arabic speakers in the world across, I think 25 countries. So it's a huge population, and we want to make sure that this language is preserved, number one, and number two is useful, and is useful in a day-to-day context with this kind of technology. So, if I'm government, schools, healthcare, that you can use this type of technology in your language, in your own native language. So I think this is the inspiration. And I also feel like there's a kind of a preservation of culture in this inspiration as well. Technology evolves, and we saw the internet come, and that's become predominantly English, and everyone has kind of almost forced into English as a language. And I think with this new wave of technology, we'd love to kind of see it become more inclusive and a shift in this kind of technology. So it's instead of kind of being a globalized thing, that we retain our local cultures and our local languages.
Beautifully said, because actually when I ask ChatGPT or other models to translate to Arabic, there's so many mistakes in that place, and it makes my life much harder rather than easier, because I have to repeat and edit. So if I use Jais, I believe this will make my life way easier.
Absolutely. Like, I think the Arabic is an amazing language. First of all, it's more of a family of different languages rather than language. And as a non-Arabic speaker, I've learned academically about this. But also the vocabulary of Arabic is extremely large. And the way this technology works is kind of it predicts what the next word is. But for Arabic speakers, it's so contextual, but based on who you are, where you come from. And you can use so many different words in different contexts. How do you see, Andrew, the long-term impact on this? Do you see connecting cultures and bridging the gap between different cultures across the Arab world and the other world? And how do you see it impacting everyone here? Well, I think it's going to be, as this technology emerges, I think it will bridge people together because you will be able to interact. I think Jais will expand into different languages regionally. We've definitely had those discussions already, and we're looking at that as an area to expand. So I think that you will be able to kind of interact across this language space through Jais or through other models like Jais as we develop further. And we're obviously working with different people and different groups on this already. So we definitely see this as kind of a cultural store, right? So, Arabic language and Arabic kind of culture and a lot of that has been stored in library books that have been on the shelf and had never made it into the internet age. And what we're trying to do is unlock that and revive that into this new generative AI stage. And that's not just text, that's multimodal. That's, I'm incredibly impressed with Arabic calligraphy, for example, and we're doing a project on that right now. And I always find that just beautiful and amazing the way that people kind of really do amazing things with this style of I guess art. And what we're trying to do right now is kind of capture all that and bring all of that, not just some part of it, but all of that into the generative AI space.
I'm already imagining the movement that's happening in the Arab world because of possibly Jais and such models. It will have a huge impact, hopefully, also in schools and educational sectors. I believe so, right? Okay, so while going through researching Jais, I saw that Condor Galaxy supercomputer from G42 and Cerebras is basically what trained Jais, right? So could you provide us with insights on the training process of Jais?
Well, it's quite technical.
Not as easy as it sounds, yeah?
It's not as easy as it sounds to go through this in detail, but we have, when we released Jais, we also released a technical paper and a white paper to make it easier for like really technical people to understand, but I'll keep it at a high level. So I think the training process was a mixture of a really strong team that we had or have between inception. We also collaborated with MBZU AI. So we work with them very closely on this. It was an amazing team effort to get Jais built and done and out the door. We also used Cerebras, the supercomputer called Condor Galaxy 1, developed by G42 and Cerebras, to train this model. And I think both of these factors were instrumental in the training. The team did an extremely strong job of coming together in a very tight timeline to develop this and release it.
Yeah.
And I think the Condor Galaxy 1 supercomputer was another instrumental part because this scale of compute made us be able to develop Jais at a much faster rate than would otherwise be done. So what this meant really was we could train Jais, the latest version of Jais, in 21 days, which is
21 days?
Yeah, it was pretty quick.
But does that give you enough time to launch it? I mean, this sounds quite extremely fast.
And it is fast. But before that, there's a whole bunch of experimentation that we need to do to make sure that we do this. And it's that iterative process by which any engineer works, but especially in the generative AI space where you need to continually train and build up an understanding of the data that you're training on, understand the kind of the nuances of the compute and also the fine tuning that we do.
I think there's so much within the white paper and technicalities just to understand the full process to go through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Jais also, what I also saw that it's outperformed existing Arabic models significantly. Yes. So first of all, is this true? And could you just tell us a bit more about the technical differentiation that sets Jais apart from the other large language models?
Absolutely. So yes, we do have a scientific approach to measuring performance. This was done again with MBZU AI. And we have gone through a series of kind of scientific measures, which are called benchmarks. And we benchmark across different models that we select. And we select them based on how relevant we feel they are in terms of size and also obviously Arabic content, obviously. So what we do here is we've done this scientific measure and we've demonstrated that Jais is superior performance to those models. And that's out there. Again, that's all in the technical paper and the white paper that's free to download and consume. And we're very happy with this performance, and we're obviously always striving for more and doing more in the background and continually trying to improve and enhance Jais.
Can you compare it to ChatGPT, for example?
ChatGPT is a much larger model. This is, I think the latest version is like no one knows the actual size, but people say that it's a 1.8 trillion parameter model. So our 13 billion, even though it sounds really big, is relatively small. Yeah. So it's hard to compare because it's kind of an apples to oranges comparison. They've also done a lot of,
it's been years also of research.
Years of research, years of work, and they've obviously commercialized it. We're at the more early stages, but we are very confident that in our next release, we'll have something that's more commercially applicable. And we hope to engage the community with this. And this is why we released the model, is to kind of to generate that interest, to give some awareness that we are doing this, and also to energize the community around this. And we've had amazing feedback from across the community on this so far. We're very thankful for everybody who's contributed and talk to us about it and explain what they're doing with it.
I'd like to know more about that. But before, there's also been lots of criticism around the energy required during training and operation. So is there a plans from G42 or Core 42 to minimize environmental impact of Jais?
Absolutely. So let me just kind of take a step back and explain how the data that was used in Jais, obviously Arabic is a major component of the data, but we also, because only 1% of Arabic is online, and that was our primary source of data, we had to infuse English to make up the size of the model. So we had to bring in some English and essentially to enable the Arabic to learn from the English. And then we also used some level of computer code called Python code that was used to bring in some level of reasoning. So what does this mean for energy? Well, we actually didn't use as much English as other models in this space, which essentially meant lower energy consumption. And on top of that, Cerebras itself, its architecture lends itself to having a lower energy consumption because of the size of its chips. So overall, we got to a point where we had a lot lower energy consumption. I mean, 1/10, we predict, of the energy that would have been used to train a model of a similar
Will you
size.
be able to continue in that direction? Because
Absolutely.
that will have a great impact.
We're going to continue in the same direction. We want to get to a more sustainable space. Generative AI is going to continue, right? Where it's going to continue and continue and continue. We see, the market really confirms this through the share price of NVIDIA, for example. But at the same time, we see that this needs to maintain, this cadence needs to be maintained, but also in a sustainable way. And that's the direction we're going in. And
you're also being selective with the data. You're not just putting everything in there. You're just doing the right with your team, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one thing that we're doing is, instead of just taking all of the internet and training on this, we're being very selective about what we train on. So data quality is such a huge issue that I think is maybe under-discussed or underserved in this situation. And this is where we really double down on, is making sure that we have the right data of the highest quality to put into our model. So that means that we, for comparable models, we use a lot less data to get to the same level of performance on our supercomputer. So this is a kind of a key outcome of Jais so far.
And now I'd like to hear from you at the community feedback. What was the most surprising, let's say, feedback, innovative ways you've seen in Jais being used?
It's early days, but what we've seen is some, people that we kind of knew were strong in the technical space. But, we had a great conversation with the Abu Dhabi police. They had downloaded Jais. They had set it all up on their premises, and they were running it.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, we were really impressed with what they'd achieved, and then they were using it and giving us really strong technical feedback on download procedures and whatnot, technical details, but also in terms of use cases, because they came up with some really interesting use cases in terms of how they would use Jais. So this is from translation to summarization of a report, because they work primarily in Arabic. So I think that was super interesting and really compelling to see people do this in the community. The other people we got really great feedback from ADNOC as well. So as a team, they came back to us and gave us some feedback again on kind of download procedure and setup procedure that they've maybe found a bit tricky to follow at the beginning. So we fixed all that, and then also gave us some really good use cases of how they can use Jais in terms of, again, summarization was a key factor, and then local information around UAE that other models just don't have, because this is our primary training area. So we've really trained on those, and we've got really interesting feedback from across the community. They're just two examples, but
have there been also feedback from private sectors? Abu Dhabi Police is amazing, and ADNOC, but private sectors, were there any?
Well, actually, your own area of PR and marketing, I think, is we've had extremely strong feedback from that group as well. We've talked to a lot of people in the marketing space, and we see huge potential for Jais in that space, generating kind of Arabic content for specific brands, for example, and making it brand specific, as well as being dialectical. I certainly never understood that when a marketing company comes to try and release a new product, for example, they have to translate it into every specific dialect of Arabic to go to
Yeah.
each market. And that seems to be a time-consuming process. And I think that being able to generate this very quickly would dramatically improve
Of course.
their time to market. And obviously speed
when I go
is
to
key.
other models, actually, I try to have because I'm Lebanese and I have the casual Lebanese, it gives me every other dialect, but not the Lebanese one. And it's very frustrating. It starts like fighting with the model.
Yeah, and I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is what we
I can't wait to use Jais for that too.
Well, when we started off, I guess we saw that dialect was something we could do. So we can ask questions in Emirati dialect, in Egyptian dialect, etc. And it responds. We're currently in MSA, but I think what we want to go, now that we've had that feedback that dialect is so important, we've really doubled down on that now in terms of dialectal response.
So I hear from you the industry is the government sectors and the private sectors. But what would you say that you've already seen this technology making a difference? Like in the present, which is the educational sector, is it the healthcare sector, which industries?
I think the education sector has been a big adopter of this, mainly because kids want to get their homework done faster. So I've certainly seen this with my own kids. So
how are you handling that? How are you controlling it?
It's a tough thing as a parent because on one hand, you can say that it's generating great ideas for them to then continue and do their homework, but at the same time, it's a challenge as a parent because they're like, well, Dad, you're building this kind of technology, so why are you stopping us using it? And I'm like, well, we just need to regulate that that usage and make sure it's appropriate for what you're trying to do. So it's a challenge as a parent, but we're also we're working with various commercial companies in this space to understand the educational requirements and how to engage and again in an ethical way that does right by the teacher, the school, the government regulator, and also the student. Right.
Do you believe in generative AI? It could also help to reach like remote areas when it comes to educational sectors, to doctors and medical sector. Yeah, like how do you see that making a huge difference now? Like
absolutely.
So sooner than later.
As a person who comes from a very remote place in Ireland, and has been to a lot of remote areas for various jobs, I think that having that medical presence that is not a person, but you can just interact with a medical expert through a model. And we've done some work on this already within G42 and specifically M42 are working on this, and we're working with them on this. But being able to train a doctor to, you can speak to, you can chat with, and you understand, enables people to live in different places, right, that are very remote and still get that same standard of care that they would get as they were living next to a hospital. So I think that's super interesting for people who live in remote areas, and maybe it encourages people to like move out of cities a bit more. And we saw in the pandemic that people had moved out of cities, and I think that was a really positive move, to kind of diversify. But I think this kind of technology enables maybe new modes of doing things, new models of living. So I certainly think it's a very interesting area.
It is. I can't wait to see it happening and making a huge difference in these remote areas for so many people, and maybe also having a new husband, new wives possible also.
I don't think so. I'm not going to go there.
And now moving on a serious note, what sort of awareness initiatives can we utilize to help the public better to understand generative AI technology and trust it and utilize it in the right way?
That's another great question. So I think a lot of it's education, right? It starts off with education. We all think that we know technology really well, but I think at our age level, right, where we came from the kind of the search space. So we tend to use, and everyone around me seems to use, who's not really familiar with the technology, kind of use it as a search engine. And it's not a search engine, right? Because it looks like a search engine.
It does make mistakes sometimes.
So it's that hallucination side of it. It does try and give you a response, but there's hallucination as an issue. So I think some part of this is kind of educating people and getting them to understand the technology better. I think younger people tend to embrace the technology faster. Again, when your homework is on the line and you want to generate something, it's I think they embrace it a lot faster than us. And I think that's one part of it. But I think the other part of it then is but
this is a very dangerous part, the hallucination, and when people like generate content without cross-checking from the right sources and then delivering the information,
absolutely,
it could have a very negative impact. So this educational aspect of it and people training themselves,
well,
not to become lazy.
Through
is quite
our
important.
Well, actually, through our kind of conversations around Jais, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but here and there, people came back to us with, even locally. I mean, we hear things on the news about lawyers kind of generating stuff and getting it wrong in court.
Oh,
But
wow,
locally
that
here,
extent.
yeah. So like lawyers kind of, generate something for a case,
Yeah.
Which is actually incorrect. But I think even locally, we've heard of different instances of people generating things for their work and it being incorrect, and then being part of a commercial deal, and then that actually leading to a person getting, fired because they've generated stuff without checking it. So I think this is, it's certainly worrying, right? From I think for everybody, right, that people are taking these shortcuts without really checking. So I think that's, the technology is new, right? Everyone's trying to figure out how to use it. It's and people are maybe assuming that it just does everything correctly. So even, with all these billions of parameters and all of this, years of work and all this data that OpenAI has done, it still makes mistakes, right?
We have to have an institute only for generative AI, educating people on how to use it, be it in all kind of sectors, right? I'm just imagining,
But I think
I want to get hired. Maybe I can teach people all that. Yeah.
We can certainly take your application, and this could be your interview, yeah. So
right.
So I'll interview you now.
Just now, yeah. Okay.
So this is no, but I think across the board we will have to educate people. I think we also need to bring people more into this economy, because we have another initiative which will be released in the next couple of months, I guess, in terms of bringing more people into this kind of generative AI economy. We want to really inspire and encourage people to come into this economy and really kind of retrain, repurpose. And this is something that I think everyone will need to do. It's not going to be I'd like to do it. I think people will really need to do, to upskill and get into this. We definitely see some level of disruption coming from this technology. Like any new technology, there'll be some level of disruption. And it's an opportunity to kind of, forge new ideas, new careers, new business models. So I think it's a massive opportunity for anybody, right? Like,
it's an opportunity, and it's also, you gotta take part of it. Otherwise, you won't have a safe place in the work environment or any other places, because it's going to make a huge impact and create new jobs and change the jobs, I would say. Yeah. Well, Andrew, in conclusion, what would you say are the areas we should we research and invest into helping generative AI grow in the next few years?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of work in terms of new research into the area. Obviously, the commercial companies around this are expanding. We see all these co-pilots coming out. So I think that's going to be one area. So it's that adoption is the number one part, and basically driving that adoption of this into people's lives, this new technology. But on the research side as well, I see that there's going to be a lot more research as people move towards, AGI. I think that's going to be a big driving part of what comes next. So I think that, there's a lot here. AI is a big area, and generative AI is one part of that. So I think when you bring that generative AI with all of the other, forms of artificial intelligence together, and we're already seeing multimodal LLMs. OpenAI just released one recently, but I think on top of that, once it also kind of moves into being something predictive, once it also starts becoming more numerical, once you start kind of bringing this kind of technology plus robots together, and we've seen various parts of this, but it's the convergence. Instead of there'll be new components to this in terms of generating new knowledge, not just new content, but like new ideas, which would be a big research area. So I think people talk about generating a new calculus, for example. That's kind of mind blowing as a thing. But also then, I think it's the convergence of lots of different technologies together. I think robotics, as I said, I think AR, augmented reality, this metaverse concept. I think all of these things will converge into a new future that is really close. I think it's very close to happening, and it's actually already happening right now. So I'm
just looking at Core 42 and what can be doing in the next couple of months. I would say not even years, couple of months. I'm sure I'm going to be hearing lots of great news coming from your side.
We absolutely hope so, and we expect so. I think this is an expectation. It's not a hope. We expect to be back talking to you about a lot of new things that we're going to do. We have a lot happening right now that it's a bit early to get into, but I think you're going to see a lot of interesting things, a lot of new kind of areas that we're going to work on, and we're just looking forward to.
We're looking forward to it too.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
It was
you.
absolutely a great podcast. I've got to learn so much on what's happening in the world. And I can't wait to hear more news on Jais and Core42 and everything's happening from tech and advancements. So once again, thank you for your time and see you soon.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the show. We hope you have a better understanding of transformative potential of generative AI and its impact on our world. Thanks for listening to G42 on Air. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to come back next time. Until then, this is May Sayed Ali signing off from Abu Dhabi.